Hey there, everybody. Welcome to today's AbleSys update. Last week on Wednesday, markets got the signal from the Fed that rates might not be going up as aggressively as expected, and so prices shot up to the daily resistance here. As prices settled there for a couple days, waiting for news, it just left concerns over trade tensions with China that was still putting downward pressure on stocks. Over the weekend, the two presidents met, and markets liked that they reached an agreement, even though it just seems like it's a 3-month truce. Over the weekend, on Sunday, prices opened up on an 80-point gap and actually continued trading up over 100 points from the reopen. But really made for a pretty poor trading session for today because following the open, prices looked like they wanted to fill the gap a bit. Here's the open at 70.40, and prices really approaching or breaking through to new lows. Really didn't get much further than that. So if we look at the trading session today, just continuously met with buying pressure on each new low. Looking forward, we might have a pretty weird week going forward. Stocks and futures markets will be closed on Wednesday to mourn the passing of George Bush Sr. And originally Fed Chair Powell was going to speak or testify before Congress on Wednesday, which would have given us a little bit more color on what the Fed is planning. And so that is going to be rescheduled, and I haven't seen a date, so just look out for that. And then also on Friday morning, we're going to have unemployment numbers coming out for November. And as always, when we have a scheduled catalyst for price action, we want to be very careful because whether we're swing trading or if we're day trading, it's very early for day trading. So, just be aware that there is news on Friday. When there's a scheduled catalyst, you typically will see prices, especially if it's not particularly conclusive news, that will kind of whipsaw both sides of the price action or the market and basically just continue on with what it was doing. So just something to be careful of. Now, as prices opened up this weekend and settled high today, we now have blue signals coming in for the daily chart here in NQ, and in this workspace we can see here we have that also for the Dow, the S&P, and also in NASDAQ. And I was probably expecting it to come in shortly after in RTY or the Russell. So basically now we have a situation where the stock market is sandwiched in between support and resistance. On the longer term chart, the weekly chart, we have a downtrend, and it's a better defined downtrend here in NQ. So we can see here as prices came down, put in a high here, a lower high here in mid-October, and then a lower high below that in November. We see that that didn't happen as orderly or as well in the Dow. Prices came up and took out that high. So really just not the same picture here. We see a higher high here versus a lower high here. And then following the early November high here, the Dow and the S&P both failed to continue down. That's what we saw last week. We were talking about how the well, I don't know if it was last week or the previous week that we were talking about how we were seeing a different picture in the NASDAQ versus the other indices, where we saw prices take out the lows. And so since then, we've seen here prices have turned that around. And so we can see the correct story was that prices were putting in this higher low here in the Dow and the S&P. And it could still make for some very good trading as prices trade up into the weekly resistance and then perhaps back down into the daily support. We want to be aware of where those price levels, and in fact, really want to be aware of here in the Dow, for example, I drew this line here at the 26,268, and in the S&P, we can see here that the high was put in the mid-October high at 28.24. It seems to me that there's probably more opportunity on the way up here in the Russell and in the NASDAQ, seeing as in the Dow and the S&P, prices have been actually fairly strong or stronger. But we've seen that turn around just a little bit here on the opening gap over the weekend. We can see here how the NASDAQ or NQ here, the pink line here, traded up and had the stronger reaction to news and basically settled as the leader on the way up today.